Dr. Bettis, as a professor of religious studies, have your professional interests included studying new religious movements such as the Unification Church? And if so, would you care to comment on your findings through that study, perhaps your impressions of the founder of that church, Reverend Moon?
Yes, I have taught courses in new religious movements for 5 years and have studied new religious movements in the United States, and especially the Unification Church, intensively for the past 8 years. I am also co-chairman of the section on new religious movements within the American Academy of Religion. And on the basis of that research, as well as on my own personal experience, it is my opinion that the Unification movement is very misunderstood and very unfairly persecuted. I know a large number of members of the Unification Church personally, and consider them to be some of my closest friends and some of the most moral, dedicated, intelligent, and committed people that I have the privilege to know. I also have had the very special opportunity of meeting for a short period of time with Reverend Moon. And again, based both on my personal experience and on my research, I believe that Reverend Moon is one of the great religious leaders of this century.
You're saying this now as someone who's not a member of Reverend Moon's church. Is that
That's right, Jonathan. I am a ordained Methodist minister. But I don't think a person has to be a member of any religious tradition to recognize the validity of the great insights that religious tradition may have. And Reverend Moon is certainly a man of that stature. He has tremendous vision, tremendous energy, and a very, very deep and vibrant spiritual life. I've learned a great deal from Reverend Moon, and from his writings and his teachings, both in an academic sense and perhaps most especially in a spiritual sense. I consider him to be a great religious teacher and leader, and I'm very proud to have had the opportunity to associate in some small way with his vision for what world peace can be like.
Dr. Scott, you've told us that you're a Baptist. You're not a member of the Unification Church. But as a Baptist, do you feel threatened by the Unification Church?
As a Baptist, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. In fact, I welcome the church and working with the church. I am not threatened, and again, it follows a fundamental principle in which I live, principle by which I live, and therefore I welcome the opportunity to work with the church and members of the church. I found the church very cooperative. I think some of the programs that the church has initiated, perhaps not being duplicated in any other church, bringing together of members of the clergy, of university professors, to consider matters of spiritual life of our world is perhaps unique. And many of these conferences have been ecumenical, far great ecumenical, not only in terms of Christian denominations, but other religions, Buddhists, Hindus, Muslims, Jewish, all have been a part of program activities of the church to foster a closer relationship and sort of a unity of mankind.
Dr. Scott, do you have any personal experience with social welfare activities of the Unification?
Yes, the Unification Church has been very active in the social welfare area. the National Council for Church and Social Action is an example of that. And they have supported many local churches which are not a part of major denominations, to reach out to the poor of their communities and through facilitating their distribution of food, finding of homes, providing education for people who are the dispossessed. I've been very impressed with that and know the record of the church in this area.
Dr. Scott, have you met Reverend Moon personally, and if so, what do you think of him as a man?
I've met him on several occasions at meetings and so forth. I haven't had a long talk with him. I'm not not closely involved with him personally, but I've been very impressed with him as a person. I think he is an outstanding religious leader. And I think he has vision for a new world, which he's trying to bring about through his church and relating to other groups. I have the highest regard for him.
So even though you're not a member of the Unification Church, not a follower of Reverend Moon, you consider his efforts valuable to the Christian community?
I think his efforts are valuable to the Christian community and to the world as a whole. And I would certainly support the work that he's doing and encourage members of his church to continue in their commitment to his ideals.
Contrary. At home.
Dr. Bryant, even though you're not a member of the Unification Church, you've had considerable contact with Reverend Moon over the past few years. What's your impression of Reverend Moon?
When you ask me that question, I immediately think of the several different occasions on which I've seen Reverend Moon, been somewhere where he has been. I've seen Reverend Moon at the Unification Theological Seminary, delivering a graduation address and praying there, and afterwards at a banquet with his family, enjoying jokes that professors at the seminary told about him. And that's a very sort of positive memory in my mind. I think of him again at the seminary down by the pond, sort of sitting on the bank talking with the students at the seminary, and it's a very sort of pleasing image. I've seen him in his home again with his family and welcoming guests and seen sort of the gracious kind of hospitality of the man. I've seen him at large conferences where he's addressed gatherings of scholars and scientists, and seen the sort of depth of his commitment and passion, his real passion and dedication to serve God and to help transform this world and to bring it more in line with God's purposes and keeping. Now, what is the appropriate religious category for speaking about Reverend Moon? Here, of course, one is going to find a lot of disagreement. I mean, in some ways, I find myself much more comfortable with thinking about and regarding Reverend Moon as a champion of God's purposes, a man who, in every context and in every situation, strives deeply to know God's will and his intention, and then not only strives to know it, but to realize it in the world in some practical and lasting way that will touch the hearts and lives of human beings. And I think we can often get into, say, needless controversy and disagreement about what Reverend Moon is. For myself, I tend to put a great emphasis on his own autobiography, his own story, and try to see him in the context of his life as a young man who, when he was 16, had this encounter with Jesus that transformed his life, right? And continues to have an impact on his life. And I try to say, understand how he, as a man from the East, would have heard Jesus's vision, his vision of Jesus. How, as a man of the East, he would have understood and is seeking to understand God's will and purposes. And I think that's where the emphasis should lie, in looking at what this man has accomplished in order to see the continuity, congruence, the fittingness of his teaching on the one hand and his action on the other. Because finally, I suppose, it is the integration of sort of teaching and life that is the most powerful recommendation for any religious figure.
Even though you yourself are not a member of the Unification Church, what is your understanding of why the Unification Church would fund and provide staff for and otherwise sponsor conferences like this?
Well, I'll give you my understanding, but I want to emphasize that this is not what I've been told, so it's just really my surmise that I've put together. That it looks to me that the Reverend Moon feels that he has a direct commission from God to do what he can towards the bringing of the kingdom of God on earth in his time, or at least approaching it as far as he can in his time. Now, one of the things that sets the contemporary world apart from the kingdom of God is the serious, tragic, dangerous divisions that thwart true brotherhood. And what does one do when one finds people pitted one against the other for reasons of race, religion, nationality? Well, it again, I'm giving you my perception of it, that what one does is one brings them together and gets them to start talking to one another. And as I say, it looks to me as though this is the Reverend Moon's sense of the divine mandate that has fallen upon him. So this is what he seems to be doing. Needless to say, I think it's wonderful.
Although you're not a member of the Unification Church, I understand that you have met Reverend Moon several times.
Yes, I have.
What is your impression of him as a man?
I'm deeply impressed by Reverend Moon. I feel that I do not know him well, of course, but both from interpersonal interaction with him, dialogue, which has occurred on a couple of occasions, and from what I know of him through others. I am impressed by his vision, his freedom from his own previously established policies, if you will. That is to say, his freedom and openness to undertake bold new ventures with a kind of breathtaking, imaginative sweep. I think we see that in things like the God conferences and other things that the International Religious Foundation are doing. There seems to be a kind of serendipity about Reverend Moon in which he goes beyond the way in which people expect he will react, to do things that are courageous. We could also say faithful. And all of this manifests, it seems to me very clearly, his profound faith in God, his sense of a deep unity with God. That's part of it. His composure, his friendliness, his humanity, these things come through as one encounters him person to person.
자, 그러면